Today we're rounding up the best CPU coolers of 2021. This includes air coolers and liquid coolers alike. So we'll be going over AIOs at the really expensive end, all the way down to about the $30 Vetru V5, although we did consider some of the other options that we had. We'll talk about this one later. This is going to help you with deciding which cooler makes the most sense for different classes of CPU. So as you try to determine what the appropriate cooling capacity is for a certain heat load, this should guide you in the right direction, whether you're interested more in raw thermals or noise-normalized thermals. In other words, if you're looking for the best efficiency in noise level trade-off versus the cooling capacity. So let's get started. Before that, this video is brought to you by Thermal Grizzly. Thermal Grizzly's Hydronaut and Cryonaut thermal pastes are high-performing thermal interfaces for use on CPUs and GPUs. You can bring an old card back to peak performance by repasting it and doing preventative maintenance, and Thermal Grizzly's Hydronaut is ideal for water cooling and air cooling for new and old cards alike. Cryonaut paste is one of the top performing pastes for extreme overclocking with CPUs and GPUs and has been used in several world record scoring machines. Learn more at the link in the description below. So as always, there will be a lot of links and resources in the description below. If you'd like to get the full review of any cooler that we're talking about today, we'll have our review in the description. For the roundups, we don't go into as much technical depth as we normally do. There's still a lot here, but it's more of a flyover. And the goal is to try and help people rapidly pick what makes sense, especially for those of you who maybe are out of the PC building game for a couple years at a time, and then you resurface when there's a new CPU or GPU launch or something. Welcome back if that's you, and we'll try and help get you back up to speed quickly so that you don't have to go through every review we've done in the past year. For coolers, just like cases, don't really age. They're primarily made of metal, and some of them have liquid in them. And so because of that, we're able to include coolers in our best of 2021 that may have come out in previous years, as long as they're still for sale and they still make sense at the price point. They haven't been outclassed by something newer, especially at a given price marker. So that's our criteria for getting into the roundup. It's basically available today in some capacity, maybe in and out of stock, but still being made, in other words, and actually good in some capacity. As always, the best way to help us fund this type of content would be through our store. If you'd like to pick up one of the toolkits, they are almost back in. They are arriving soon. We've got them on back order on the store, so if you want to guarantee you get one in the next run, you can go to store.gamersnexus.net and back order one there. They have been out of stock for a long time, and people snipe them as soon as they come back in. We have a massive quantity coming in this time. However, if you want to make sure you get one, make sure you get a back order in. That will guarantee it goes out in the next round. It's 10 high-quality tools that are built specifically for PC building, and I tuned them for GPU disassembly. So we've got stuff like ground down hex heads and things like that so that it can clear small SMDs that are surrounding common mounting points on a video card. So that helps us out, and it gets you a great set of tools for building your computer at the same time. Let's get started with the best CPU coolers of 2021. We'll start with the best overall. Our first award is for best overall cooler. We had a huge amount of good choices this year, including powerful air coolers and all-in-one liquid coolers alike. But we're giving best overall to the Scythe Fuma 2. The cooler that receives this award must be a good mixture of a good price, good performance, reliability, and good mechanics. The Fuma 2's $60 price point immediately puts it in a better position than many of its competitors, putting it mostly head-to-head with the NHD15, except that's $90 to $100, and the Assassin 3, which is $90. It's also head-to-head, in some ways at least price, with the NHE12S Redux. So that one's $50, but the Fuma 2 ends up being more powerful. An extra $10 here versus the Redux gets you far better performance overall, as you can see in our 100% speed 200 watt heat load chart. The Fuma 2 runs at 60 degrees over ambient here, with the NHE12S Redux at 62. Although that difference sounds small, there's one more nuance. If you look at the noise levels for each, the Fuma was far more efficient with its 34.4 dBA results to the 40 dBA results with Noctua. The Scythe Fuma 2 peaks at 34.4 dBA, so it was already at about our noise-normalized threshold for testing. This cooler would be an excellent fit for a mid-range PC build and up, and it's suitable for 65 to 125 watt CPUs without any issue at all. Of course, you could use it lower than that, but there's not really much point. 200 watt heat load CPUs are a possibility for it, but you'll be at max speed, not that it's that loud, and you'll need a case that aids the cooler. It's going to suffer if you end up with a case that's really closed off. We'd definitely use a better cooler for something like the 12900K, but this would be suitable for most other CPUs actively sold right now. The biggest issue we had with this cooler was its mounting mechanism. We thought it allowed a little too much torque to be easily applied, and so when we reviewed it, we mentioned how we backed off the pressure by about a thread or two. You can learn more about that in the review. As long as you're aware of that though, it's easy to work with. Overall, Scythe did the best job of balancing affordability and quality for a 2021 cooler. Best noise-normalized thermals is up next. This category is straightforward. We simply award this to the cooler with the best thermals at a fixed noise level, compared versus all others, of course. This means they can't just brute force their way to the top of the chart, although we do have an award for that as well. The Arctic Liquid Freezer 2 420 wins that award. In part, this is because it's a 420mm radiator, which is the biggest we've tested, so that's an advantage, but it's also because of the offset mount that Arctic introduced for AMD Ryzen CPUs. We weren't sure whether the offset would legitimately help or be a gimmick, but it did actually boost the performance. As indicated by thermal paste spread on the bottom of the cooler or by looking at our pressure testing maps, the offset mounting positions the cold plate further off of the IHS and centers the microfins in the block on top of the silicon chiplets underneath. This is all benefited by Arctic's non-RGB Liquid Freezer 2 line remaining one of the most affordable liquid coolers at a given size, especially the Liquid Freezer 2 280 that we've awarded in the past. The Liquid Freezer 2 series is easily one of the best value coolers we've worked on recently, and Arctic extended the warranty in the past year as well, including a retroactive warranty extension for existing owners on all of its Liquid Freezer 2 coolers. Although the 420 gets best noise-normalized thermals on size and its unique offset bracket, the 280 and up get our recommendation as more affordable or reasonably sized high-performance coolers with a good balance of features. The VRM fan is a nice addition, and it does work, as we've shown in our LPM testing, but it's not necessary for most VRMs, so even though it actually does something and it isn't purely a gimmick, it's sort of a gimmick. There are also RGB versions of this cooler, but the internals are all the same as we've shown in our teardown. It just has RGB fans instead. It costs more, obviously, because lights. Arctic's unique and engineering-focused approach for the Liquid Freezer 2 lineup gets it best noise-normalized thermals for 2021. The award for best flat-out thermals is up now. This one gets split between two recipients, the EK AIO Elite and the Lian Galahad AIO, both in 360 variations. This award is simple. Running coolers at their full fan and pump speeds, we're looking to see who landed at the top of the chart, particularly for the 200-watt load we test. There's zero nuance here, it's just thermal performance, so that means being louder is potentially a benefit to getting to the top of the chart. The Galahad and the EK Elite both ran at about 53 dBA at full speed, with both yielding thermal results in the range of 45 degrees to 46 degrees Celsius above ambient. They're both within run-to-run variants of each other and error, so they're tied for this one. These outpace the Arctic 420 because of their increased noise. So while Arctic is more efficient with its thermals, the others technically win here. We'll talk more about the EK Elite in a minute for a different category, so we'll shelve that one for now. The Galahad is an early Lian Li attempt at an AIO, so the company still has to prove itself in this market. The cooler mostly focused on marketing its looks with the RGB fans and the pump block that looks like the same champagne color an NVIDIA CEO might put on his own CEO edition of a video card. The balance here of looks will come across as either incredibly gaudy or elegant, depending on who you are. Regardless, thermally, it did well. Our next award is for Best Budget Cooler. This category is reserved for a combination of the highest possible performance in a certain price class. Our target for these coolers is under $40 to $50, and this year, the Vetru V5 manages strong thermal performance for its $25 to $30 price point. We're not sure yet if we'd recommend this cooler for Alder Lake CPUs, given the increased IHS area, but it would very likely be fine for future lower TDP Alder Lake variants, like the inevitable 12400. The 12900K would be too much for the Vetru V5, which failed our 200-watt heat load test, but the 12600K would run. Flatness on the Vetru V5 was within the average, looking at our contact plate depth chart, and that's far better than we expected for such a cheap cooler. Mounting pressure was subpar though, it was spotty across the surface. In our 3800X pressure test, you can see the heat pipes crossing the IHS, indicating that at least the most critical part of the cooler is capable of making contact, or acceptable contact, but it's not great overall. In noise-normalized thermals, the Vetru V5 did better than the similarly priced and more gimmicky Aigua Shadow Max V5, and was basically tied with the NHU12S Redux. The Redux has far better build quality and has Noctua's name behind it, but thermally they're about the same in 35 dBA noise normalized testing. They were also similar in 100% fan speed testing for thermals, although the V5 ran 3 dBA louder. So the Vetru isn't efficient, but it is cheap. The Vetru cooler doesn't feel expensive, and it doesn't have an advanced mounting bracket or a high-quality nickel-plated cold plate. It feels and looks exactly like its price would indicate, which is a middle-of-the-road single-tower air cooler for the average PC build. This would be suitable for the likes of the R5 5600X, the R5 3600, if you're maybe just looking to upgrade your existing build with a better cooler, something that's maybe quieter than stock. This would do that for you. It's good for the i5 11400, probably a future 12400 or similar. The 12600K is suitable, and the R7 5800X would skate by as acceptable, but both will run warp. So you'll need to make sure that you have good airflow for the case to accompany the cooler. If the case doesn't do well for airflow, it's choked off, especially at the top, then the cooler will have trouble to brute force these higher TDP CPUs. Our award for best mechanical design is next. This one goes to the EK AIO Elite 360 DRGB, which has a lot of letters in the name, so that probably means it's good. The EK AIO Elite DRGB is expensive, it has a lot of RGB, and it has the 6-fan variant as well, which is an extreme of both of these attributes, price and RGB. But best mechanical design ignores all of these factors and focuses only on build quality. We reserve this award for acknowledging when a company has gone overboard with engineering the look, the feel, the mechanics of a cooler. With the Elite, EK massively improved on the original EK AIO pump block and housing, which we said in our review looked like it had been 3D printed in a shed in someone's backyard. EK went with a black nickel pump housing this time. It looks a lot better than whatever it was before. Internally, it uses the same massive impeller that we found inside the EK AIO original that we reviewed, which is actually a harvested component from an open loop product previously, and it shows. Compared to the Bantam Asetek solutions, which use a small, cheap plastic impeller and exude legal aggression as a replacement for innovation, the EK AIO cooler uses a bulked-up pump body and internals to deal with the flow. Arctic also went this route, innovating its way past Asetek's products on the market. The EK Elite has excellently designed mounting hardware, which also landed on this award list. Although there's a lot of hardware involved at about 18 pieces for AMD, it isn't pointless hardware. The mounting pressure in our pressure diagram shows that EK had a purpose for this complexity, and the spring tension is well tuned for the application. None of that is to mention the EK Hub. The EK Hub appears to be a rebrand, but it's one of the nicer ones we've worked with. It's a fan and RGB control PCB with an acrylic housing, capable of running all of the 6 Vardar S 0.18 amp fans, and it's enclosed for extra protection. EK over-engineered everything in this cooler in many ways, and that's why it gets our Best Mechanical Design Award. As a runner-up, the Noctua NHU12S Redux was also mechanically extremely competent and impressed us. The price for the performance didn't make sense for comparison to the Fuma 2, for example, but the cooler is built extremely well. It has updates to the top of the fin stack to improve rigidity and strength, and it's a small attention to detail thing that we noticed and appreciated from Noctua. Updates to the fan make it good, and reliable mounting are what we'd expect of a company that builds its brand on reputation. The worst cooler we worked with this year was the Goldenfield Initiate. This AliExpress bargain bin cooler hasn't been fully featured on our channel yet, so we'll save the most fun details for the review. Check back for it. In short though, it required some dremeling. Actually, kind of a lot of dremeling in some places. And the Area 51 style plastic obsession on the outside, while suitable for an Alienware PC, resulted in some of the worst thermals we've ever seen on a cooler with this size. It's a poorly designed downdraft cooler that has a unique look, but it failed to execute basically everywhere else, and more on this one soon. So that's it for this one then. In terms of worst trends, we like to throw in a worst trends of the year in each of these as well. The worst trend for coolers really seems like it's just sort of a continuation of existing trends. So the first one we'll point out is Asetek has reawoken. Asetek, if you don't know, is a supplier. They don't really brand and sell the coolers themselves via retail, but you might find one of their coolers in a pre-built system, and you very likely have encountered their coolers in the form of an older, Corsair doesn't really use them much anymore, but an older Corsair AIO. You might find them in NZXT AIOs, EVGAs, coolers, the CLC brand, things like that. As for being a bad trend, it's not in the form of just sort of still being there and coming back. The trend is that Asetek has reawoken its litigation arm. Asetek, if you don't know, is extremely litigious and doesn't like it when people try to compete with it. And so instead of making its own product better, it just sues people until they go away. This has worked in the past. In fact, there was a lawsuit that went all the way to a judge. It wasn't just settled previously in California with Cooler Master, one of their divisions, and Asetek won. However, in more recent months, in the past year especially, Asetek has been going after other companies. And these days, maybe the sort of best aspect of that story is that companies like EK and Arctic and a couple of the others have gone out to actually innovate in a way that it just fully clears, or at least from our layperson perspective, appears to clear the patent that Asetek has on putting a pump inside of a block on top of a CPU, because that's a unique idea. Anyway, that was not a great trend to just see a bunch of litigation instead of Asetek going, maybe we should do something better instead of just trying to live off of this thing for as long as we are. Other bad trends, one thing we're not big fans of is the excessive amount of RGB LED to the point of making it actually much harder to build with. We'll pull up a shot of the EK DRGB Elite AIO. Hey Patrick, can you cable manage this?
No.
As nice as that cooler is for many other reasons, the cable management is an absolute atrocity. It's a crime against humanity at this point, how many cables you have to deal with if you have RGB LED fans. There has to be a better way, but in the interim, what we'd like to see at some point is the industry come to some kind of consensus on making an RGB connector that doesn't suck. So specifically, not just the three-pronged things that you have to electrical tape together to make sure they don't come unplugged as soon as you slightly bump the computer or open the side panel. There's a lot that can be improved in the world of RGB, and manufacturers who are watching, if you want to keep doing the RGB LED stuff, that's fine. We get it. It's popular. It seems to do well. It obviously increases sales. Okay. Please do something better, though, in terms of the technology, the connections, making it so that it's more manageable for a human to connect, so that you don't kill all of your time if one of the cables comes unplugged and you have to dig it all back out of the power supply shroud to try and figure out which one it is in your RGB centipede of cables. Anything better would be great in that capacity. But anyway, that's it for this one. There were a lot of great coolers we tested this year. There's a lot of them from the previous year too that are still available and still competitive. Cooling technology does change and improve, but it's not at quite the pace as CPUs and GPUs. So links in the description below if you need additional assistance in figuring out what's best for you, and the product links are there as well. Thank you for watching. As always, we'll have more of these best of roundups as we approach the end of the year. They're always a lot of fun for us because we can look back and get perspective on what we've looked at for the best and the worst of any given year. So thank you for watching. Subscribe for more. Go to store.gamersnexus.net to grab a toolkit, and we'll see you all next time.